Now, one of the important criticisms, you just addressed it in part, but you're very selective with the causes that you pick up. And if you look at the lawyers from the other side, the other side of the spectrum, who are equal in standing. For example, a couple, Sibal. He takes up a lot of causes where the collective interest of, say, the left or the Muslim community is taken care of. Now, for example, recently, he went to court after the new violence. There was a PIL and he was representing it, saying that there are calls for boycott against the Muslims, etc. Now, what happened to that case is a separate matter. But he did do that. And in front of our very eyes, we see cases like the Delhi riots, for example, and so many other cases just crumble. And Hindus who have even been wrongly incarcerated seldom get good representation. And that then has an impact on their personal life, but also on the larger cause, because we keep losing these cases because lawyers of your standing are not taking them up. So what would you say to this criticism? Why are you so selective? And if not you, how do we get those lawyers from our side of that standing? Because it takes a long time to get there. And if we start now, we'll get there maybe in 10, 15, 20 years. So what do we do now?
I have to give a slightly longish answer to this. And just bear with me on this. How old is Mr. Kapil Sibal?
I don't know, 60 plus.
At the very least, close to the 70?
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
70 mark?
Yeah.
I am fortunately on the right side of 40 still. Okay? And when Mr. Sibal or any of his contemporaries were of my age and who come from the other side, what do you think they were doing?
Commercial litigation.
Commercial litigation. 2, he can do all of this, and people of his, let's say, group can do all of this because the other side has an ecosystem. We have nothing. We don't have an ecosystem. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's a statement of fact. And I've been an independent person. So my journey is that I was with a law firm for the first 7 years of my practice. When I left the place, I quit as an associate partner because I wanted to go independent and set up practice as an arguing counsel. So I've completed 7 years. So the first thing that I'm bound to look out for is establishing credibility as a practitioner of the law before I take up something that requires a lot more face value. So the one thing that we tell people in my profession, overrate your talent, but don't overrate your face value. Okay? Because you need to know whether a particular forum is ready for what you have to offer. You have to constantly work towards it. 2, assume for a moment on a daily basis on Twitter, we see so many cases coming up which are of consequence to us. I don't deny it. If I were to reach out to them and say, I'm available, what is the impression I'm giving? That I'm an ambulance chaser who doesn't have anything else to do. And I certainly don't want that under any circumstances. I respect myself a lot as a practicing litigator to do that. It's not right, professionally speaking. Now, when people reach out to me, either I tell them, this is local, you'll have to go with someone, and I put them in touch with someone. You know this for a fact.
I do.
You know quite a few lawyers, because I was very clear that as a civil commercial litigator who also practices constitutional law, I'm not going to take up a criminal matter because that requires specific expertise. So I've recommended you to others, right? I've done this to a lot of other people. So what is it I'm capable of doing? I'm capable of, let's say, tapping into my networks so that people have subject-specific specialist representation so that the matter doesn't suffer at the altar of any person's ego and that competence meets concern. That's how I've gone about it. Also, I think what people don't realize is why I wrote the book and what is it that required such a long introduction to the first book. By the time I wrote the book, I had at least 3 or 4 constitutional bench matters to my credit, or at least major constitutional matters to my credit. And what did it tell me? We are trying to address the symptom and not the problem. Every issue is a symptom, not the problem in itself. The larger problem is that of a mindset. Who is going to bell that cat? Now, I know what happens in that forum. And there I say that I fortunately have the ability to also communicate and articulate my position outside of the courts as well. Now, therefore, I thought it's important for people to know how the system functions. What is it that the system applies by way of a prism or lens when our issues go before the court? And then I had to ask myself, okay, so what is the meta problem here? And that meta problem analysis led me to colonial consciousness. Now, I had to articulate it. Now, when I present the common problem which afflicts all our problems, by and large, people have a clearer picture of what is the uphill task that we face in courts. Why is it that an Indian institution or a Hindu institution faces such deep, rigorous, let's say, scrutiny before an Indian court of law, which is supposed to be its own motherland? That's a question that we haven't asked ourselves. So I tried to do that. 3, a lot of these barriers also arise from legal education. In terms of what is it that you're taught as part of a political science exposure and your legal exposure to legal theories. What is it that you're told about the philosophy, the thought, and the legal theories of this land? What are you exactly indoctrinated in? It's not teaching anymore. It's indoctrination in these institutions. So therefore, there was a conscious call to start talking about it. And if you remember, my very first talk on temple freedom preceded the Sabarimala appearance in September 2016 at the Constitution Club. Not Constitution Club, the Press Club of India. That's where I spoke. My prognosis then was validated during my Sabarimala experience, and it continued thereafter. And it's not just a function of a particular person, it's a function of an institution. Faces better than mine, and with reputations better than mine, and with an experience vastly superior to mine, have taken a shot at the system. So if anybody reads the Ayodhya judgment, they'll see that two specific arguments were made as part of the Hindu side, the temple side, which is the deity's rights. That stood validated. The second argument that was made was that the kshetra, the bhumi itself is a deity worthy of worship. That was rejected by the court. This was being presented by senior counsels of eminent stature, people who have spent at least 40 years in the profession, Mr. Parasan longer than that. Right? Considering that, clearly the system needs a slightly different approach. That's where I had to get slightly academic in my analysis and presenting it through the academic audience as well as the lay audience. Hence the books. Now, what is the consequence of this outreach, the lectures and everything else? One, people can see that I'm trying to articulate the position better. I'm trying to flesh out the problem better. And I have also subjected myself to rigorous scrutiny in the form of a book, because when the pen meets the paper is when the true test is of your ability to substantiate your argument and how convinced you are of your position. I've done that. Tell me honestly, forget the commercial success of the book. I don't care about the commercial success of the book because it makes no difference to my bottom line. The point is this. Don't you see more people drawing from the thesis of the book and the content of the book and connecting it to the problems that they face when they deal with the system?
Absolutely.
Youngsters are doing it. Storyboards have come up. I'm not talking about the success of the book because I have to keep underscoring it. It's always assumed that I'm trying to somehow draw attention back to the success of the book. I'm not.
There's nothing wrong with it.
See, I'm not someone
it is
who
a
has
widely
to.
successful series.
So each of these interventions, if I may call them so, has been thought through. I'm not saying everything is planned, but there has been some thought spent on it. So I can legitimately say this without sounding arrogant and without feigning humility, which I'm incapable of, that there is a clear shift in the, let's say, in the manner in which we look at things across the board, across age groups. These interventions were needed. At least maybe, let's say, 5 or 6 years ago, how many people actually spoke of temple freedom in our public discourses and our public debates? A lot of people were working for it, by the way. Right? I'm obviously not the first person. Several people have been doing it for decades. I've named them abundantly several times. Mr. T.R. Ramesh and a lot of other people, including people who criticize me for not taking up enough matters which relate to temples. I will give them credit for the fact that they are doing it full time. I have no problems with it. I will not take away credit for somebody else's work just because they happen to criticize me. If they've done something, they've done something. However, their position is different from mine. But the fact remains that the issue has now gained significant traction. Even in 2014, which is seen as some kind of a tectonic shift in our Overton windows and whatnot, this awareness wasn't there. It has started post that. Social media, articulation, all of this is important. And this is where it's important to know how the left operates. Every legal issue is preceded by tons of writing, opinion creation, opinion making, opinion shaping, which reaches different quarters, the academic quarters, the judicial quarters, the bureaucratic quarters, the policy quarters, before it is finally pushed in the form of a policy and then to the law. That's how this works. I know this because my fraternity is full of these people. I've even, let's say, in my professional capacity, in my erstwhile avatar when I was working for a firm and thereafter, if someone comes to me with questions of free speech or questions of whatever it is, invariably it's organizations from the left who are in courts. So then it's not just about ideology, it's a larger question of free speech. Then you see what the preparation is. Then you see what their approach is in courts. Then you ask yourself, okay, you want to take on a particular ecosystem. क्या आपकी तैयारी उस लेवल तक है या नहीं? ये तो सवाल आपको करना पड़ेगा ना. I'm not in the game of securing votes. I'm in the game of the intellectual side. Not to say that I'm an intellectual. I'm saying I'm in a place where it's not about popularity, it's more about rigor, and it's more about credibility. Right? There you cannot not have enough preparation on your side because it's not about personal charm and aura and whatnot. It's much beyond that. Because at some point that charm and aura won't work. It's hard logic that works. So when you see all of this, I told myself, you know what? A lot of people, thanks to the Sabarimala experience, will expect you to take up everything under the sun. Don't. Even if people think that you're being arrogant, so be it. If people think you're being hyper-selective, so be it. If people think that your participation in these matters is a careerist move or an opportunist move, so be it. Fortunately, I genuinely don't care for what most people think of. it doesn't make a difference to my life. If I think something's right, no matter what the opposition, I'll take the position. It makes no difference to my life. So people need to understand this better. Let's look at the two options from a practice model that I would advocate.
Yeah.
If there's a fantastic ecosystem that's capable of producing INDIC rights lawyers from our end, where there's a specific career path, I would try and push more and more people in that front if they're interested. Personally, I'm not someone who's cut out for it because I enjoy commercial litigation, not just because the money it makes, but because of the challenges it actually throws your way. I'm an engineer turned commercial lawyer with intellectual property is one of my core strengths. Why should I even give up on that? I have no reason to. And I certainly am very clear that you cannot support dharma without artha, particularly because I don't have the Vedic training. So what is our strength? Our ability to either make money or our ability to articulate the position without being first-hand trained in the knowledge of the Vedas. Right? We are not Vedic Brahmins in that particular sense. So we are second-grade Brahmins, if I may call so, where we are not direct Purohitas. So if that is the case, you have to play to your strengths. Two, the thing about someone who is commercially trained and trained in trial practice, all of that, is that unki soch bahut barik hoti hai. When you bring those skills to your causes, then the manner in which you pursue it and let's say the sharpness with which you articulate it is different. I can take credit for this, that at least I can't be faulted for the quality of my articulation of my positions. It's a function of two things, my nature and my training. Training being an important aspect of it. So people don't get these softer aspects because they don't understand how the legal profession works. We still look at suits and all sorts of stupid sitcoms to understand how the profession works in Bharat. It's a very different ballgame altogether, right? Yeah. So I can't sit and explain all of these decisions to everyone. I'll say, it's okay. I'd rather spend my time doing what I think is right in the way I wish to do it.